And good evening, everybody. Welcome to Bite-Sized Learning. I am Dr. Mike Sevilla, your President-Elect of the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians. I am very excited for our guest coming up. But first, I just want to do just a little announcements, just so people can kind of filter in here into our interview this evening. So first, there's still time to register for our annual virtual meeting, which will be Sunday, August 9th, which I believe will be 3 weeks from tonight. So you go to ohioafp.org, you can register there. If for anything else, you can see me being inducted as president. How about that, people? Yes, I know, very exciting. So next, I just wanted to give a little plug to a program that OAFP is having in September 30th. It's entitled Building Cultural Intelligence to Break Down Racism. It's a virtual CME program. It is from noon to 5 p.m. Wednesday, September 30th. Again, it's on the front page of the OAFP website, ohioafp.org. And then we have merchandise. They have cool masks, they have t-shirts. All the proceeds go to the OAFP Foundation. So go and check all of those out. And finally, just a couple of announcements of guests coming up. 1 week from tonight will be my good friend from Arizona, Dr. Natasha Bouillon. She's going to give us the COVID update from Arizona. As you know, you've been watching the news. It's a hot spot out there. She's going to give us an update of what's going on the ground out there. And 2 weeks from tonight, very excited, my good friend, Dr. Danny Lewis, who's been all over media last few weeks. He's a family doc, and he survived COVID-19, was on the ventilator. Now he's out being an advocate for his community, his state, his specialty. So very excited about those. But tonight, very excited. Our guest tonight is the immediate past president of the Minnesota Academy of Family Physicians. Dr. Renee Chrislow joins us tonight on Bite-Sized Learning. So Dr. Crichlow, thank you so much for the time this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Sevilla. I welcome the invitation.
So, we have a lot of topics that I'd like to touch on. I appreciate the time tonight. And I really want to focus on the present and moving on to the future, but we will touch a little bit on the past just to set some context. So my first question for you this evening is, I tell everybody, remember where you came from. So Dr. Crichlow, tell us, where you came from, and then, a little bit weaving through on, where you're at today, in your practice type setting.
Oh, well, I was originally born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, while my father was at the University of Oklahoma studying petroleum engineering for his master's. We actually had to live in Oklahoma City because Black families weren't recommended to be living in Norman, Oklahoma at that time. We went off to Northern California. He got his PhD at Stanford, and then we came back, and he was actually a professor at the University of Oklahoma. And by the time he came back, we could actually live in the town as a Black family, although there were only about 5 Black families in the town I grew up in at the time that I grew up. But I was exposed to academia very early. My father was the first Dr. Crichlow that I knew, and he was as a petroleum engineer. I was very confused because it said Dr. Crichlow, but I knew he dealt with petroleum, which I knew was oil. So I thought maybe he was a doctor of sick oil, and grew up to understand that was not the case. But the fact is, we were always around the university, and we'd been around academia a large part of my younger years. And I remember one time when I was hanging out over at my best friend's house waiting for him, and his mom was a circulating scrub nurse at the local hospital. And she was one of the people I respected most. And she said, "Renee, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I was like, people really like talking to me, and I really like science, so maybe I'll be a doctor. And she looked at me and she said, "Renee, you'll be an excellent doctor." And that touched me so deeply that I realized the rest of my life, whenever a kid would talk to me about what they wanted to do with their life, I wanted to reinforce that excellence was available for all of them. It's like excellence is not perfection. It's the pursuit of growth and doing your best. And she told me I could be an excellent physician. So I was like, well, she's pretty smart. And since age 12, I was pretty well focused on that. Due to lots of very interesting combinations of life chances, I ended up going to 3 different universities before I graduated. I was at Boston University, I was at Oklahoma University, then Boston University, and then I finished up at University of California at Santa Cruz. Slime on Slugs. We were the Banana Slugs. I played, I was captain of the soccer team there, and our mascot was a very large slug. But I learned a lot in that whole journey, just about perseverance and resilience and building allies and networks and realizing that no one gets anywhere by themselves. And all of that was very important to me. And every one of those little wrong turns or different paths actually taught me quite a bit. And it wasn't until after it was done that I was like, you know, I'm glad it went that way. I'm glad it took me that long to get to medical school. And I entered medical school at 27. I went to the University of California, Davis, and I was very happy to go there because they were very focused on family medicine. Although I was unaware what family medicine was, I remember getting admitted, showing up for the first day of classes or orientation, and everyone was just milling around, chatting. I think it may have been the last time I wore a dress in my life, but you know, whatever, first impressions. And I remember someone going, what's your specialty? I was like, well, I want to be a doctor. They're like, you know, no, what kind of doctor? And like, the kind of doctor that takes care of the people. And they're like, yeah, but what's your specialty? And I said, I want to take care of all the people, like for their whole life. And they're like, oh, you're a family medicine doctor. And I was like, yeah, I'm a family medicine doctor. Whatever that is, that sounds good. And we just had amazing faculty, totally great role models, people who were just like on the cutting edge of, you know, patient care, patient communication, research. It was, UC Davis was a fabulous place to learn. And I really, really, really enjoyed that a lot. And that's where I first got introduced to family medicine, and I had some amazing mentors. And at one point, it was just, it really sealed the deal. It was like, these are the people I want to grow up to be like. This is my family. My family's family medicine. And so I stayed for residency, and then I went directly from residency to faculty. And in the process, I've always loved Montana. And I thought I was going to end up practicing in this small town called Red Lodge, where I did quite a few of my rotations. But I really fell in love with teaching. And Dr. Clea Bertakis was our chairman at the time. And our chair, she's like, I think she saw me do my grand rounds, and she's like, you need to consider going into teaching. And I was like, okay. And then, you know, 25 years later, I'm here. And it's, you know, it's been a wonderful ride. And I remember being like the youngest person on faculty. Now I'm one of the oldest people in our program, and I'm just like, how does that happen?
Yeah, you mentioned before we went live here, you know, that obviously, you know, this is July, in the first month of the academic year, and you know, obviously you've been in the hospital, you've been, you know, teaching residents and students. You know, for people, you know, especially, you know, people outside of medicine, you know, can you describe, you know, describe what it is like to train the trainees, especially at the beginning of an academic year?
Well, it's so amazing because for those of you who don't know, family medicine residency is 3 years long. 3. Your first year we call intern year, and then second year resident, third year resident. And the academic year goes from July to June. And it's a cycle of growth that it just blows your mind. And it repeats itself in one way or another every single year. And I'll start actually with June, because June, all the interns are the best they'll ever be as an intern. All the second years are the best they'll ever be as a second year. The third years could run the place. They're so good. And like June, as a faculty attending, you're like, this is so good. This is so nice. And you just like, you get to like do the intellectual processing, challenging people, but they know all the systems. They know the EHR better than you do. And it's just the smoothest running machine you've ever seen. And then July comes. And the thing about July is that they're all still brilliant, but they've all been pushed up to another level. And there's that little hesitation where like, can I do this? And one of the best parts about being attending is saying, yeah, you can. This is what you're ready for. And one of my favorite things is watching the second years who were interns like 2 weeks ago, just helping out the new interns, showing them the ropes, talking them through hyponatremia, all the stuff. And it's just like, everyone's a little hesitant because they're moving to the next level. But what they do is what we pride ourselves on in family medicine. They help each other out. No one person has to know everything. And so July is an interesting time, but it's also one of the best times to watch people grow. And it's so touching.
So what about kind of your personal growth as an educator, as an attending? Describe a little bit how these residents and students and these new learners and learners you've known for a long time, how do they recharge you? How do they further inspire and challenge you as an educator?
Oh, they keep learning stuff. There's so much stuff to learn. Well, it's really, this is what I really love about being a teacher in academia, because someone's always going to be challenging me with something. And it's not like, do you know what you're talking about? It's like, hey, let me know what that means and help me figure that out. And it's this endless engagement with growing. And one of our mottos at our residency is learning is winning, because we want to instill in them the idea that you're not going to be able to know everything by the time you're done with residency, but you will know how to critically evaluate clinical situations and take care of people and learn how to continue lifelong learning. And it's just like, we think of ourselves as a group of learners. We call the postgraduate year 1 is internship, PGY2 is your second year, PGY3 is your third year. I'm PGY 25. That's the way I look at it. And and we help each other learn. And we really, really love to serve the community that we serve. And the way we select our applicants for our residency is, one of the most important things, do they care? And are they able to grow? Are they willing to learn? Are they able to grow? And do they care? The rest is details. We can teach that. One of our other mottos was North Memorial Family Medicine, where excellence meets caring. And that's sort of the way we try to sort of cultivate that culture, so that we all know that's what is expected of us. We take care of each other, we take care of our patients, and we take care of our community.
My guest is the immediate past president of the Minnesota Academy of Family Physicians, Dr. Renee Crichlow. Let's shift topics here to kind of current events. And I did want to touch a little bit, about COVID-19 and coronavirus. For people who don't know, Dr. Crichlow is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this story is national, but if you can just share a little bit with me, what the COVID situation is in your community, in your state, and what's been the situation where you're at?
Well, I really think one of the things that I appreciate the most about the time we're going through right now is it really sort of points out the need for good leadership. And I feel that our state with Governor Walz has had a very evidence-based approach to dealing with COVID from day one. There were a couple of times when our academy and some of the organizations encouraged him to shut down sooner than he may have wanted to shut down. But he did his decisions based on the experts at our MDH. We've got 2 amazing academic health systems in the state. We have some of the best Fortune 500 manufacturing, and all the people in the state actually started pulling in the same direction for the most part. And early on, flattening the curve was the motto. And being an essential worker during the shutdown, driving to the hospital in the morning, and it looks like there's no other human beings except you, and the roads are empty, and people took it very seriously. They only went out when they had to go out, and the lockdown actually allowed us to ramp up our hospitals so we'd be ready. The hospital, our programs at North Memorial, we changed the entire structure of admitting, and we have floors that are strictly reserved for COVID. You don't move in between the floors. We finally got enough PPE. We got things to the point where when we did start opening up, it didn't overwhelm our hospitals. And we're still doing a very slow opening, and I think it's conscious, and we're looking to encourage more masking. One of the reasons we are very interested in masking is there's not a whole lot individually we can do to stop things, but as a community, we can. And our outpatient practice is at Broadway Family Medicine Clinic in North Minneapolis. And North Minneapolis is a low wealth community, and it's urban underserved, low wealth, 80% African American, 20% immigrant, mostly Hmong immigrants. And our population is the ones that, because of structural racism and the structure of our society, are most vulnerable when something like this comes through. But I was very proud of our residency. Instead of just, honestly, instead of just whining about it, we went out and started forming alliances with organizations that were trying to do things like mask our community. We've gotten to there's about 6,000, I think, 6,000 North Minneapolis residents. And we were working with folks like African American Leadership Forum, the local leaders in the NAACP. We were looking who had already started a masking program, trying to get North Minneapolis fully masked before even there's been a mandate. And our medical students, our residents, our faculty just dove right in. I mean, we're at the point right now, we started probably the week before George Floyd was murdered. And since then, we've distributed over 4,000 masks, because this is the thing. We know that our community is vulnerable, but we also know that our community is strong and resilient, and trying to help them deal with the challenges they have is one of the things that we really aspire to as a clinic. It's, we talk about where you live, learn, work, and play has a greater impact on your health than anything we do in the exam room. So one of the things we try to teach our residents and our medical students is you got to get out there. You have to listen to what the needs of the community are. You have to listen to what they believe the solutions are. And then we augment, amplify, and scale it up so that they can help. We can use our privilege to help them. And these folks were already doing it, but we were able to get it to the point where we're continually putting out more and more masks. And like I said, over 4,000 masks in the community of about 6,000. And I think that's a good start. We want to get like 10,000 so everyone will have a couple of replacements. We got to let it sit in the sun after washing.
Something that was really cool early on, and this is mainly your state chapter and probably you personally as well, is that, I saw you and other officers in the media on television, educating the community, trying to alleviate fear, trying to educate that. Were those opportunities from your state chapter or from your hospital system? How did those opportunities present themselves?
Well, it's your fault, Dr. Sevilla, because you got me tweeting, and what would happen is that various news organizations would then contact me through Twitter and say, we'd like to interview. And then once that ball started rolling, it just kept going. But you're right. The big thing that we were thinking about is getting people out there, especially family docs, because we communicate well. We know how to translate the big scary things into things that are actionable. And that was our largest goal. We wanted to get people aware that, COVID-19 was coming, but the most important thing was not to panic. It was to plan and prepare. And, the virus is not the enemy as much as greed and fear and, hopelessness. Those are the big enemies. If we can help people have courage, compassion, caring, and kindness, we can get through this. And the biggest thing that we tried to do was get that information out there as early as possible, It's like, this is something that we can, as a community, as a state, we can deal with this, but we have to deal with it together. And our big motto was, the only way out is through, and the best way to get through is together.
And we both have colleagues, who, great family docs, who would be great people, in the media or in leaders in the community. What advice do you have to those docs who are like, I'm not really somebody who's cool on TV or who would really do good on the radio? Or what advice do you have to, to help them, share what their knowledge is as a family doc in their community?
Well, the thing I do that really helps me is, honestly, I consider it teaching. So it's like at the end of the visit, when you're running through someone's blood pressure meds and you want to make sure that they understand the difference between taking their amlodipine versus taking whatever beta blocker they have, and you have a conversation with them about what the possibilities are. That just comes from the heart. You're trying to communicate something to someone you care about. And so that's what I think about when I'm in media and all those kinds of things. I'm trying to communicate something from my heart to that other person. And sometimes it's, lots of people on TV, but honestly, I just sort of do either small group teaching or one-on-one teaching. And it's just that moment talking about from my heart to the best. I always like to look and talk to the best part of the other people. Some people, I honestly believe everyone's doing their best, although sometimes it doesn't look like that. And so when I'm speaking to someone or broadcasting, I speak from my heart and I try to speak directly to their heart. And so just, consider it one person, consider it two people, consider it, your best friends who aren't in medicine but are curious about something and they really respect you. That's the other thing. Always assume people respect you, because they should. You should respect them and they should respect you. If they don't, you'll never know about it because, it's on the other side of the camera. But the fact is, speak from your heart to their heart, just like you're educating a patient at the end of a visit, to the point where they'd be able to teach back. And that's sort of what I think about it. Don't think of it as too big. You have something to offer.
Excellent. My guest is Dr. Renee Crichlow from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I want to just switch gears again. And when people think about Minneapolis, they think about George Floyd, and that is something that I did want to talk about. I don't want to dwell too much on it. I want to talk about solutions and things, but I did want you to kind of share with our audience, and you've shared this before in other venues. I think it was that Friday night you were in the hospital, and there were people out protesting, and there were people out, out in front of your clinic as that was happening. Can you talk about that night and what happened?
Yeah, so I'll roll it back a little bit. The day George Floyd was murdered on camera in the street, it was very numbing to me, because for some reason I was like, we'd had Jamal Crawford, Philando Castile, and now George Floyd, like all within the last 5 years. And but something felt really different. And I really think it was sort of the combination of the distress and the fear around COVID that just bubbled things to the surface. There's like, yeah, people are not going to want to take this anymore. This has got to end. And you just felt that kind of energy rising in the cities. And at one point, part of our neighborhood, before, it was Thursday, actually, I think, that morning, things were getting a little rowdy around the area that's near our clinic. And it was a bit concerning. We had switched a lot to telehealth prior to the murder. And so that day, I think we transitioned to telehealth completely that day within like 20 minutes. And we're like, okay, everyone find the place. We're going to get this done. And then that Thursday night, it was bizarre to be watching TV and seeing, I was like, okay, I eat lunch there, and I know the guy that owns that building, and that building's on fire, and it's right across the street from our clinic. And then I'm going to be really clear. I think there's a very big difference between protesters and rioters and looters. people that were protesting. There were some people who, whether parts of that or not part of that, most likely not, from the way the pattern of destruction went. Our clinic got broken into, it was ransacked, it was looted. It's primarily our offices, which got flooded. And it was so weird because we get a call, we know it's happened. They're like, no one go down there. The leadership is going to evaluate things when things are safe. And it was a wreck. And it was one of those things where you're like, it was still in the midst of all the initial fervor, and you're like, what's happening? You couldn't tell what the next moment was going to bring. But we knew that our clinic was very seriously damaged. And there was a place in the clinic where someone had tried to start a fire. And we also knew that the next night was going to be Friday night. And Friday night during protests are generally a little more rowdy. And we were concerned that our clinic would burn that next night. And it was Friday during the day when a few of us got contacted on social media by some people who were very active in the protest. And they're like, what do you people do at that clinic? And we're like, all of us. And it was fun because many different of us that they contacted. We're like, we're family medicine doctors. We take care of everybody. We take care of the babies, the kids, the moms, the dads, the grandmas, the granddads for their whole life, whether it's acute or chronic illness. We're family docs, and we've been serving that community for over 45 years. And it was pretty amazing because, then we saw tweets going out. Our clinic's called Broadway Family Medicine, and there's these tweets going out that says, no one burns Broadway. No one burns Broadway. And it was because that two-way street, they understood that we take care of them as family physicians, and they were taking care of us as a part of their community. And that was just an amazing, that's Friday night, I was actually on call, delivering babies of our patients. And I tweeted out a big thank you. It's like, thank you guys. There was a neighborhood watch that basically, stood in front of our building and all the buildings around there and didn't let anyone near them. The community was taking care of itself, and they felt that we were part of the community. I think that's one of the greatest things about being a family doc, is you can be that person who serves, but also becomes integrated into something special, which is a neighborhood and people that care about each other.
And I'm going to ask staff to put the Medium link in our Facebook chat here, and because there's a lot of reaction, obviously very emotional reaction in that community and nationally about kind of what happened. But then I saw this, and I think it was written by a colleague of yours, saying basically, our clinic was affected, was destroyed, whatever, but we're not mad at them. Can you explain a little bit about that essay?
Yeah, so Dr. Andrea Westby and I, she does most of the writing. She types faster. And also, we basically helped frame this idea. It's like, we're not mad at our neighbors, because what we're actually mad at is it's what caused that situation. Structural racism is what caused that situation. That's what needs to be addressed. Being mad at the people that may or may not have, hurt our clinic. Clinics get rebuilt. Clinics are walls. They knocked them down and put them back up by now. It's like, it's the fact that our patients are suffering disproportionately. Police violence, chronic illnesses, all of the burdens of being Black and brown in this country is concentrated in communities like the one we serve. They're amazingly strong, amazingly resilient. And the fact that they're standing up and saying, no, this has got to stop. We're just going to support that, because it does have to stop. And I'll tell you what, that weekend, we went out to our clinic to see what we could do. And already in the parking lot was set up grocery pickups, medication. There was an entire, basically, resource market giving away things to people in the neighborhood, because all the grocery stores had burned and there were no more pharmacies in the neighborhood. And our residents and our students and our faculty were all there, chipping in, bagging stuff. We took care of all the over-the-counter medicines, and that resource area has been there it was there consistently for the first week and a half, and now it's I think they were just weekends, but the neighborhood was already there, and we just popped in. I was wearing my white coat because I didn't want to go in and out of the clinic lifting things without someone easily identifying that I'm a doctor, because the police situation there was a little iffy sometimes. But the neighborhood got together and started taking care of each other, and we got to be a part of it.
We're going to talk about kind of what's next, but I just wanted to ask you, have there been, I mean, that's a great story that the community has come out and to help the clinic. There have been there other updates or other things anything that has happened from your point of view, since the news cycle kind of has died down in that community? I mean, what's been happening since then?
Well, I think a lot of what's been happening is people trying to make real long-term structural changes. And both the communities of color that have been working on it for a long time, and a lot of folks who are realizing that they need to be anti-racist instead of just not racist, and finding out what that means and trying to grow. Our state chapter has been very cutting edge. We've been working on stuff like, removing race-based medicine and improving health equity for 2 or 3 years now. And it's nice to see the rest of the world catching up with the innovators in Minnesota. But,
yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And it's just like our state chapter has been working on this for a long time. And what makes that helpful is when there's the actual interest in change, we have some structures in place. How to be an anti-racist is not something you just fall off a log and can do. You have to, first you have to learn cultural humility, which so many people don't even understand. It's like the idea that as doctors, we can't solve anything, that just makes no sense to us. So if we can just understand that we are going to be allies, we're going to use our privilege, we're going to work with people who have been working on this a lot longer than we have. We're going to ask them what they need from us. And sometimes what they need for us to do is just listen. And that is challenging, but it's one of the biggest things that we teach in working with communities. We tell people you need to listen to hear, not to respond. Whereas we're trained up in medicine, you're on rounds with your attending, you listen to figure out what to say next. And that's just not the way to work with a community. Is we have to say, what is it that you need that you think I might be able to help with? And honestly, one of the biggest things was realizing what we got to give people was a chance. If you want to be an ally, the first thing you work on is yourself. And you don't make all the people of color teach you, because we have other things that we are doing. And if you want to be a part of this, it's about engaging your own personal growth first. Because, I really don't have time to sit down with every person who needs to understand what it's like to be Black in America. What I have time to do is address the structures that need to be changed and help people who have the ability to change it. But I think we've been doing as best as we can. And I think one of the things about cultural humility is realizing we're not perfect. We're not going to be perfect. We're just going to do our best.
My guest is the immediate past president of the Minnesota Academy of Family Physicians, Renee Crichlow, and we're talking about tough stuff now. We're talking about what's next. We're talking about solutions. Too often, people in the news cycle like to admire a problem and really not go to the next step and what's harder. And one of the things that's really been great with Dr. Crichlow is that she's been sharing her story, sharing the story of her community, but really kind of sharing what the next step is, solutions. And Dr. Crichlow, I did see you, I think it was on an AFP town hall, and talking about, or one of your colleagues was sharing curriculum to teach some of this stuff. Can you speak to or describe a little bit of that, what's happening, kind of in medical student and residency curriculum?
Well, it's it's very timely, I'd say, that there's some people who've been working on this kind of work for quite a while. At the University of Minnesota, our department has basically a vice chair of equity, diversity, and inclusion, Dr. Andrea Westby. And they've been putting these kinds of ideas, into concrete ways of engaging learners for a long time, but, trying to find a way to get the voice out. We have been trying to do this for a while, but now that there is this urgency, it's actually both challenging and helpful. The challenge is people want to solve things right now. And as we said before, this has been going on a long time. People have been working on it a long time. And one of the first things you can do is work on yourself. That's one of the things I learned from Dr. Westby. And there's a various sets of basically what some people are calling anti-racist curriculum, anti-racist personal growth. There was a group of young activists that put out a curriculum that they called Justice in June, where you worked whether 10, 20, or 30 minutes every day, working through, lectures, readings, articles, videos, things that will help the person who's working through this curriculum engage with the fact that there's a lot for them to learn before they're even ready to step, into the battlefield, the struggle. And one of the big things that they talk about is, you have to do work on yourself first. And it's because this is uncomfortable. And the kinds of stuff that we're doing at a program level, at a department level, at a university level, all this kind of stuff is putting people in an uncomfortable place. And one of the things that I try to teach my learners is discomfort is where the growth happens. So the fact that, the dean is asking Dr. Westby to help us set up things for the university, and our chair asks Dr. Westby to help set things up for our department. And she's worked at our program level for a very long time. It's one of those things where very often right now, there's lots of people who have been doing it, but they've been doing it as the one person. And what we're trying to do now is see how we can augment the skills of those people who have been doing the work, but provide an opportunity for other people to grow so that they can start doing the work. And AAFP, STFM, all these kinds of organizations are working and trying to get this kind of knowledge scaled up, and so people will be able to engage in a way that's constructive.
So what's awesome about this is we get questions from people in this format, which is awesome. So I'd like to bring up a question / comment from our colleague, Dr. Delacruz, and we can bring that up on the screen there. So it says, please talk about the ladder and how it relates to family medicine pipeline and health equity. And you may need to give some context on the ladder language.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Delacruz. So the ladder was, 2012. I was doing STFM Emerging Leaders Fellowship, and one of the things that we had to do was get a project together, something that we were wanting to work on anyway. And in the school, I had started at University of Minnesota in 2009. And one of the things that I had noticed, I was teaching small groups as a part of my teaching. And one of the things I had noticed is I had a group of about 8 first-year students, and 2 of them were from Rochester, Minnesota. And I'm like, there's 2 from the same town? And then I was like, oh, Rochester is where Mayo is. And actually in that class, there were quite a few people from Rochester, Minnesota. And as I mentioned, the community we serve is North Minneapolis. And I think there was 1 student in the entire first and second year class from North Minneapolis. So I thought to myself, like, what is going on here? One of the things we always do is we ask every kid that, does a well child or whatever, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd heard tons of folks say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse. And when I actually, am teaching the people at medical schools, like our neighborhood that we serve is not being represented here. And initially I thought, oh, well, those Rochester folks, they're exposed to Mayo. Either their parents are work at Mayo or they know people. It's like medicine is something that they're exposed to all the time in some way, shape, or form. And so we were like, okay, well, why don't we do that for the kids we have in North Minneapolis? Why don't we set up something that is basically what we call cascading mentorship, where we start at age 9 all the way, we say 9 to 99. But so far, we haven't got anybody past 91.
Nice.
We have med students, residents, practicing community physicians, 9 years old people, middle school, high school, undergrad, and we all gather every second Saturday of the month pre-COVID. And basically, I don't call it a pipeline, I call it a community of purpose, because our purpose is to help each other learn and grow and move further up the ladder. And our motto is lift as you climb, build as you grow. And it takes place in North Minneapolis, as I mentioned, mostly African-American, Hmong, and immigrants from around the world. And it's one place where we have representations from all those areas. And what is really been helpful is our students of color that are in undergrad, college, or medical school. They often say that it's one of the best things that happens to them in the month, because it's one of the few places they can go and not be the only brown person in the room. And they get to help. They get to do what they said they wanted to do in those med school essays. They actually get to help the community. They get to be a mentor, and they get mentored at the same time. So the whole idea around lift as you climb, build as you grow is that we all help each other get to the next level. And it was interesting because as we started that, our whole idea was like, oh, well, there's kids. We need to help encourage them and help them want to be doctors. And, that's a part of what it is, but it's also about teaching resilience and caring and compassion and courage, because those are a lot of things that you need to actually make it through medical school in a way that's healthy. And we enjoy it. It's like, it's really fun to mentor, and they just revitalize you every time. And seeing little kids reading x-rays, seeing a junior in high school using an AED, not a real one, we use a simulated one. But it's like, one of the last ones we had before COVID was surgery and suturing. And, we just tailor it to it's a full spectrum from 9 all the way up to practicing doctors. And we teach it intergenerationally. So the younger kids are learning from the kids just a little ahead of them. And then they all have a medical student with them or a resident. And it lets them know that it's okay to be the smart kid. That's also nice. And it lets them know that no one gets anywhere alone. We succeed when we help each other. And those are kind of lessons that help keep kids interested in school. And one of the big things, everyone's just like, oh, how many doctors have you made? I said, you know how long it takes to make a doctor? But one of the things we're really clear about is, keeping kids interested and excited about school. If we can get a kid to graduate on time from high school, that adds like 10 years to their life. We don't have any drug that does that.
Yeah.
But, support and caring can do it.
And implicitly, I guess that the health equity piece that Dr. Delacruz was kind of going through is that it's kind of in that kind of format as well, as far as teaching and the health equity part.
Well, a large part of it is the fact that, as I mentioned, I don't like the phrase pipeline, because as I mentioned, my dad's a petroleum engineering. I know that pipelines are leaky and expensive. And you look at, if you want to health equity addressed, we do need to address the educational inequity that we have. The fact that in 2018, over 4,000 Black applicants to medical school. Only 1,500 of them were accepted. The thing is, we kept thinking that there weren't enough kids interested. There's a lot of kids interested. There's a lot of kids that are making it as far as possible. And the last barrier they have very often is the fact that things like the MCATs, internships, research positions, traveling the world, leadership examples, those are the things that are valued. And those things cost time and money. And our kids don't have the time because they're doing things just to keep their family together, gets to stay in school. You know, one of the biggest problems we have is recruiting kids from high school. It's the smallest, and we have tons of kids. Yeah, I'm totally interested, and they're totally smart. I was like, have you heard about the ladder? Like, yeah, but I have to work on Saturdays.
Right.
And it's just like, that's the kind of thing that really started waking us up. It's like, we need to help get rid of those financial barriers that get in the way of the kids that actually have the ability to succeed, but they don't look like it. They don't have the little check boxes. They didn't go to, you know, Sierra Leone and start a health group. They went to work. I had one kid, I always tell this story, and it's like, looking at his stuff, I said, you need more leadership on your CV. And he's like, you know what? I lead myself to school, I lead myself to work, and I lead myself home to study. That's what I have time for. And it's just like, these are the people that we're missing out on. This is where health equity just gets pushed to the background, is because we're trying to push people into systems that are actually, honestly, not built for them to survive. You have to look like a 1950s rich white student to get into your application. The checklists that we put together are the ones that have been around forever. Test scores, you know, internships, research. These kids are just now getting to know people who are doctors they can talk to. Now they get to follow us. Now, if they want to do research, we can help them find people. And now one of the things that the ladder is doing is we're saying things like, hey, high school student who's really smart and bright, you say you need to work on Saturdays? I'll tell you what, we'll give you job mentoring. We'll pay you to come and do the work of mentoring, because guess what? This is important to you, and it's important to those kids. So, and they get to put it on their application, they get to help people, and they get the time to get the mentoring and support that they also need. So we're trying to get rid of some of the barriers, because we know that more people that we can actually, the only time I like to think of pipeline is when I'm flooding it. I want to just make it so that as many kids who are capable and caring can get to that next level. And, you know, we just have to think different structures. We have to think different ways. If you can pay $8,000 to be guaranteed a 510 on your MCAT score, and have someone from Princeton test prep help you with your essays and help you with your interview questions, yeah, anyone's paying thousands of dollars and then saying, oh, it's a meritocracy. Yeah, I don't think so. Most of our kids, even if they score almost high enough, people say, oh, well, you should just take it again. The majority of the folks that I know who are black and brown and got in medical school, it was one and done, one and done. That's all you had money for.
Right.
So we're trying to address the structural inequity and trying to support people. And the ladder is a place where you can do all those things and just also have fun and learn and be rejuvenated as a doctor. Our community doctors, they would hurt me really badly if I tried to stop this, because they're like, it's like going to the gym. You think you don't want to go, but then when you're done, you feel so good and you want to come back the next time. So it's been wonderful for us.
We have a related question from Kate talking about health equity, and it says, given your unique experience, what advice can you give family medicine colleagues to help them close health equity gaps at the same time as public health officials consider closing services and businesses again? Yeah, I can put that back up again. Yeah. So I think you talked a little bit about this already, but probably have some more thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, the first thing I'd say is I think it's really important, number one, to realize this is a long struggle. It's been going on for a while, and it's going to continue to go on for a while. And as my good friend Dr. Andrea Westby says, you guys, you got to work on yourself first. You have to look for anti-racist curriculums. You have to look for anti-racist readings. You have to really realize that you're not going to be the one that solves this. You may be the one that's going to be able to help, but the first thing you have to do is really examine yourself. And for all of us, what part am I playing in this? What part am I, what are the assumptions I'm making? And there are many different ways of getting that kind of resources and information. But, Dr. Westby, one of the things I keep talking about her, she's amazing. One of the things,
no, she is amazing. Yeah. I mean, every time I talk to her, she's just like, oh man, I didn't even think about that. It just makes you think, pushes you, challenges you, and just challenging the system. Yes. Great family doc.
And one of the things that they've done, they started an anti-racist book club. where they're reading books that have been recommended, and they're having conversations, and they're doing their work at work, but they're doing their work on themselves as a very important part of how they're going to engage with people. And so one of the things that I also say is find out who's doing something, who has been doing something, and see what you and your colleagues in your clinic can help to augment and support and amplify those efforts. There are folks around you who are doing this work, and it's time to recognize them, because we're not going to solve this. We're hopefully going to be a part of the solution, but we're not going to be the ones that solve this.
Question from Eric, sounds like from Minneapolis. Are you familiar with the Phillips Powderhorn Cultural Wellness Center? They do profound work in teaching on this subject. Are you familiar with them?
Oh yeah, totally. And they've been doing this for decades. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Find the people who are doing this. They are understanding that structurally changes need to happen. I mean, they built a cultural change into their wellness center. Those kinds of places are amazing. And as I said, these are the people that have been doing the work for decades. These are the kinds of folks that we need to seek out and support. Phillips Powderhorn is in the south part of Minneapolis, and the majority of work, as I mentioned, we do is up north in Minneapolis. But yeah, no, it's an excellent organization. If people live in the Twin Cities and haven't heard of it, definitely Google them and check them out. They're very innovative.
Our time is going very quickly here. So I will ask you, Dr. Crichlow, kind of for a closing comment, but I just kind of wanted to reflect a little bit kind of on our conversation, in that let the audience know that, family docs, we need to have conversations like this. And I'm glad that Dr. Crichlow was able to come on. I'm really going to encourage a lot of my family medicine colleagues to have, really great conversations like this. We need to let the general public know, we need to let our communities know that, family docs are leaders in our communities, and we can drive the conversation. We can influence opinion. And I know that family medicine, family docs, a lot of them are like, that's not really my job. That's for somebody else. But I mean, I really want to encourage, all the family docs out there that, we are leaders. We have to drive the conversation. We have to be the ones to drive change. And it is conversations like this that really continue to inspire me to really kind of continue that change. My guest tonight has been Dr. Renee Crichlow, the immediate past president of the Minnesota Academy of Family Physicians. Dr. Crichlow, as we kind of close up our conversation tonight, I know you do really well of kind of buttoning things up, having a great kind of closing type statement. As we close up our conversation, what kind of reflections do you have, and what kind of inspiration and what kind of advice do you have for not only our family doc audience, but just for the general public on kind of where we're at with today with things?
Well, this is the thing. We are living in probably the most interesting times in many, many decades. And honestly, they're very scary because they're so unpredictable. And when I'm in a situation, almost like falling back on our train, when you're in an unpredictable situation, you fall back on your values and your character. And one of the most important things for us to realize right now is it's going to be uncomfortable. We're all going to be uncomfortable. But you have to move towards the discomfort, because that is where the growth is. And going towards that growth together, understanding that, especially as family docs, if you believe in the social determinants of health, if you believe that health begins where we live, learn, work, and play, we have to be involved in the communities around us. We lead often by following and augmenting the stories of our patients, participating in advocacy, the policies that are going on right now. Everyone can have a voice. As physicians and family physicians, we have a respected voice, and we have to help those who aren't heard as well. Whether it's the virus or structural racism, we actually have no choice but to deal with it. And if we deal with it in a kind, caring, compassionate, courageous way, then we get to the other side. The only way out is through. And as I said, we get through this together. And as family docs, we're not just family, we're not just medicine, we're family medicine. And it's critically important that we engage. They need us, and we need each other.
Awesome. Awesome. Before we close things up, so again, go to the OAFP website. What we're going to do is, if you've missed any of this conversation, it's going to be here on the Facebook page. We're also going to put it on our YouTube page to continue the conversation. Dr. Crichlow and I are going to be on a panel coming up at the AAFP National Conference. Very excited about that coming up. And then we're going to be having a lot of great programming here in Ohio from the Ohio AFP. Follow us, here on Facebook. Tell your friends. We're on Twitter as well, trying to tell the message of family medicine, because if we as family docs don't tell our own story, nobody's going to do it. So, thank you so much, Dr. Crichlow. This is so much fun. I hope we're going to have more conversations like this. I know that your schedule's way busy because you're super famous. But thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Sevilla, I'm always there for you. You've always been there for me. You made me who I am.
So this ends our bite-sized learning for Ohio AFP tonight. Have a great night, everybody. And we'll talk to everybody very soon. So bye, everybody.